Okay, and we are back with our video. Let us go.
On a very individual level. And the idea for me comes from Nietzsche and his idea of the will to power, which he explains as every organism has a desire to expand itself, has a desire for expansion. And so I think that for human beings, the desire that we have this innate propensity for wanting to expand beyond our limits. We want to feel like we have some degree of ability to influence other people, that we can control our own career and learn more and develop greater skills and have more kind of power and influence in our life. The feeling that I cannot have any power or influence over my children, my spouse, my colleagues, my boss, my career in general is
My
deeply,
body,
deeply unsettling for the
my body, that's a big thing. People are very disturbed by the idea they have no influence over their body.
human animal and causes all kinds of attempts at what I call negative power, passive aggression, etc., setting yourself up as a victim to kind of leverage power in a negative way. And so the problem is, a lot of this comes from Machiavelli, who inspired a lot of the 48 Laws. The problem is that we live in a world where this desire for some kind of power butts up against kind of codes of behavior that have gotten stricter and stricter and stricter, particularly in the 21st century, about what is acceptable, about what is politically correct. So we're supposed to appear to be these paragons of virtue, these paragons of fairness and democracy, etc. At the same time, we're all trying to angle for different degrees of power in our work, in our relationships, etc. And so, because of that dynamic, we have to be extremely careful in this world. And I compare it to the courts of like Louis XIV, where all of the courtiers, if they're too overt in their power moves, the king will disapprove of them and will not banish them, but they'll be kind of excluded to the corner of the palace. And so the game was to be sort of indirect, to be polite and ingratiating. And if you had an enemy, to know how to kind of very quietly get rid of them. And so this is kind of where the 48 Laws of Power came out from. So you quoted me, I had like 80 different jobs, probably more like 60, 65. But I saw all kinds of very deceptive games being played continually in the various different jobs I had. And I worked in every conceivable field. And I didn't see any kind of honesty about this dynamic in the human world. And it really kind of irritated me. All the self help books were sort of describing a world that I never saw existed. You know, I saw people being very political, having egos and having problems with their egos. And I didn't see any books like they're kind of describing what I had encountered every day. So law number one is never outshine the master. And the idea is that if you try too hard to impress your boss or the person above you, you're liable to make them feel insecure. You're going to trip on their ego and something bad will happen to you, right? And so this seemed like the fact that people have egos and operate with egos and you have to be careful with them seems very clear to me, but I didn't find books out there that were describing it. So I hope this kind of gives you an idea, a little bit of the context where the book came from.
Well, so I can't remember who sent me this. I think it was Clay Routledge. Yeah, I think that's right. He just sent me a survey that this organization he works with has completed, stating that something like 40% of millennials don't feel they have any control over their life.
Right.
So that is related to the first issue that you brought up, and you obviously consider that problematic. And you said that, well, it's good for us to have some control over our destinies, and also to feel that that's a possibility, to see it at least as a goal.
Yes.
And
that is definitely important.
If we feel consciously thwarted in that goal or believe that it's impossible, that doesn't mean we're going to give up our stride.
That's one of the reasons I know Week to Warrior is going to be successful, because ultimately my goal is to build out the network of the company. and ultimately employ people from the network. So, one of my strategies for getting highly performing people, like my younger brother who works with me, is give people a sense of direction over their lives, and then they will come and want to work with you. Useful to use these principles.
It means it's going to go underground, and then it's going to manifest itself in all sorts of
I use these all in the running of my company. I'll share with you how I do that.
Deceptive ways.
Exactly.
And then you said that you were interested in Nietzsche's idea of will to power as, in some sense, the central motivation of the organism, across species to some degree. And then you talked about the jobs that you've had. So why so I got that right? I hope I've got that.
Yes, you did. That was very well put. Thank you.
Okay. And so to some degree, and then you said, well, you had all these jobs, and you found that people were engaged in manipulative and deceptive strategies a fair amount of the time, and that no one was really warning people about this or delineating out the strategies.
Yeah.
Okay, so that seems to me to be reasonable. I'm a big admirer of the work of Carl Jung, which everyone listening to this knows more than they even want to know. And he was certainly sensitive to the idea that people had a terrible shadow.
Yes.
That they would clothe themselves in the garments of moral virtue.
Right.
And act out a virtuous persona, but because of the thwarted will to strive, in some sense, that they have all sorts of motivations, sexual, power-related, dominance, aggression, anger, resentment, that aren't admitted thoroughly, and that are snakes under the carpet or elephants under the rug or skeletons in the closet, and they pollute human relationships. And I certainly believe that's true. I believe that's the corruption of human relationships by a form of severe deceit.
I'm just noticing I have to not clench my jaw. I tend to have this tendency to clench my jaw and grind my teeth, which my dad has. I don't want to develop that.
I also think it's reasonable to warn people against that, and also to alert them to the fact that such things operate in their own souls. I guess what I wonder is, so then the last thing I'm confused about to some degree is, you had 65 jobs. How come so many jobs?
I was a very restless young man. It doesn't speak very well of me in the fact that I couldn't hold a job for more than 11 months. I came out of college and I wanted to be a writer, and I had all kinds of romantic notions of what that meant. And then I entered journalism and I worked in New York, and I didn't find that was a very good fit. So I moved to Europe and I wandered around for 4 or 5 years trying to write novels and working in hotels, doing construction, kind of the writer's life where the variety of experiences were kind of giving me material. And I never was really happy in overtly political environments, to be honest with you. I'm kind of a born entrepreneur. I like working for myself. I didn't like a lot of the games that were being played. And I'm not very good at them. I mean, I've gotten better at it, but a lot of the things that I write about in the 48 Laws.
I am not good at all the manipulation games people play. I like to be direct and tell people what I mean, and that doesn't go well.
Power, such as never outshine the master, are things that I did poorly.
I made this business model so I can just be direct and tell people what I mean, because it's just based on my own life story.
Wrong, and I suffered for them. So I understand the kind of the pain that a lot of people have in the work world, which is sort of hard for a lot of other people who don't have that kind of experience to understand how deeply frustrating it can be when you have a job that you're not satisfied with. And so I was someone who was very restless, and I never felt comfortable in any of the different jobs I had. And I was also trying to broaden my experience.
Okay, so I had a lot of jobs when I was a kid. I worked as in a garage pumping gas. I worked as a dishwasher for years. I was a short order cook. I re-tipped drill bits. I worked as a beekeeper. I had a lot of, I worked in a plywood mill, running plywood pieces through a huge dryer. We used to try to light the thing on fire.
Okay, I have sold Christmas wreaths for the Boy Scouts. Wasn't really a job though. Sold cookies, sold sunflowers, shoveled driveways, mowed lawns, painted houses, done demo of houses, built houses, rehabbed houses, um, rehabbed decks, installed floors, painted the inside of houses, made burritos, done transcranial magnetic stimulation, done therapy for the autistic, and been a waiter, been a health coach, sold Christmas lights, installed Christmas lights. Uh, what else? Am I missing anything? Still health coaching. Sold supplements. Oh, sold supplements. Sold supplements on eBay. Sold tea on eBay. Personal trained people in person. There's probably more.
It was like a block long, this dryer, fired by natural gas. And if you worked really hard, you could stuff it so full it would get crammed up in the middle, and then it would light on fire, and all the fire sprinklers would kick in, and then the whole building, which was like a block square, would fill up with steam. It was God. So. Anyways, I worked in a lot of jobs, and so, but I didn't. So this is something that's worth getting clear. I liked the jobs a lot, almost all of them, not all of them, but almost all of them. I got along with the people that I was working with. I didn't have the same exactly the same experience that you're describing. And you said that you had a harder time. I don't know.
I had a lot more like Robert Greene's experience. This might be because we're both from the United States and Jordan Peterson's from Canada. I don't know.
Exactly. Was it fitting in? You didn't like the overt political elements too. And like when I worked in restaurants, I didn't really
This is very specifically for men over 30 years old who make at least 150 grand annually. In the next 45 seconds, I'm going to show you exactly how you can get ripped.
Experience that, like I got along with the guys that I was working with. There was a lot of joking around. And it's not like I like political maneuvering. When I got into university and saw people in bureaucracies, particular, maneuvering politically to attain dominance, I find it absolutely appalling, that underground power struggle. But it sounds like you had a harder time maybe than I did adapting, and that that became a conscious puzzle for you. Is that a reasonable way of thinking about it?
I think so. It made me think about myself, like maybe I'm doing something wrong. The natural reaction in these situations where things, it wasn't that I hated all of my jobs. Some of them were fun, so I don't want to give the wrong impression. But when mistakes were made and maybe inadvertently made my boss or someone feel insecure, it caused me like months later to kind of question what had happened and maybe something I did that was wrong in that environment. And so, I felt, it wasn't that I felt uncomfortable, but I felt sometimes that trying so hard or being good at my job, which was often the case, was often the detriment, which was a very strange realization.
Yeah. Well, that's a really good sign that you need to go get a different job.
I worked at every job I've worked at except for this one TMS clinic that got shut down shortly after I started working there because the doctor who ran the place, was being basically unfairly targeted by random people trying to exploit him for money, and then the medical board was like going along with it, and it was just this whole, things are bad. Like, things are really bad in America in terms of honesty and jobs.
Worked with clinical clients a lot, in career.
My dad literally can't tell people what he thinks at work. I don't even know if I'm gonna say more.
Counseling, and my sense, one of the things we'd analyze right away was, well, can you actually do your job well and be recognized for it and have a pathway to something approximating success? Or are you around truly toxic people who will punish you for
I've been in pretty much has been that.
For your virtues, in which case, well, let's get your seat.
Like, it's horrible. It's like actual slave labor. Like, I actually have come to the conclusion that entry-level jobs are slave labor. And I have not been lazy in searching for jobs. On that note, I'm going to go take a bathroom break and tune in tomorrow to continue this fascinating series.